Hello and welcome everybody to this XTB live news video. My name is Walid Koudmani, market analyst for XTB. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the main events happening on the markets this morning, what we can expect from the US session, what the main events on the economic calendar are for today, and we're going to take a look at the charts for some major moves and some key levels to keep an eye on. So thank you again for being here with us. Today is Monday, the 22nd of March, 2021, and we're coming back from a weekend where we had some news actually that we're going to be talking about right now that actually impacted the markets as well. So we had a mixed session in Asia, the first session of the week, with the S&P 200, the ASX, so the Australian index, gaining 0.6%, while the Nikkei dropped 2.07%. So similar performances echoed in the European markets this morning. DAX managed to recover from the low it reached this morning and is actually trading higher right now. But this is all due to, or at least in part due to, the Turkish lira plunging over the weekend and during the first part of this session today, where after President Erdogan fired the central bank governor, and that led to some huge moves on the USD Tri pair along with other Turkish lira pairs, which then ended up impacting primarily the a few European indices, and in particular the Spanish index. We had also reports that the European Union is continuing to discuss the supply of vaccines, which could then go and impact the recovery. So these are all the main events to keep an eye on as well, not just from an economic calendar point of view, but from a news and fundamental point of view. It's important to keep an eye out for the news regarding the vaccines, the reopening, and of course these political tensions, which we ended up getting a quite an interesting meeting at the end of last week with the Chinese US meeting that many of you may have seen that wasn't too positive, but again, it's still a negotiation process, so they're probably looking for common grounds anyway. Bitcoin over the weekend, some volatility in the crypto markets. Of course, Bitcoin gaining higher and then pulling back from the recent highs, but still around $56,000, $57,000. And we saw natural gas and oil, along with precious metals, trading lower. Let's take a look at the economic calendar today. Not much from a macro point of view. We have the existing home sales for February from the US, but the main events, as I said, are the news. So to keep an eye on for the whatever fundamental news is happening regarding either the oil prices or the vaccines or the reopening or lockdowns. As we see now, mainland Europe is looking to extend or even reintroduce some lockdowns for the third wave of COVID. But with the main events today are actually central banker speeches, particularly from the Fed. So we have 4 central banker speeches. Primarily, of course, is the head of the Fed Chairman Powell. And it's going to be important to keep an eye out for what they say, because markets, and in particular bonds, have been really reacting to the latest news coming out from the central bank, which then has gone and pressured other assets, for example, like stocks, in particular tech stocks, and precious metals, which many of you may have seen gold dropping to very low levels as of late, but recovering slightly lately. Let's move on. With a lack of data, honestly, and news, let's move on to the charts and take a look at some major moves, because we had a few. So we can start with the DAX, as I was mentioning. You can see a positive ending, or let's say positive ending near all-time highs last week, and then we saw this pullback after the recent news and in the first session after the Asian and the news that we received. So you can see this pullback, drop, some consolidation around here, and then a pullback to 14.55. And then a bounce back from there. Currently, it's testing this previous price reaction area. So this acted as a support in the past. Now it seems to be acting as a resistance. And then this, of course, seems to be acting as a support, as you can see the price bouncing several times. And of course, it acts as a resistance in the past. So you can see that sometimes previous resistances or supports, when they get overtaken and surpassed, you can see that they turn into the opposite of what they actually were. If we take a look at the FTSE of London, we can see continues the negative performance, so unlike the DAX, but also similar to the DAX, we saw this pullback and then the rebound. Let's take a look at US indices. S&P, similar situation, but as we head into the open, it trades just below, or just above 3,900 points, below 4,000 key area, and of course you can see here the all-time high reached not that long ago. But there are still some areas to go through. So you can see this price reaction area that acted as a support here and then acted as a support and resistance. And then we have another one here around 3,933. But these are short term because you can see it's on the hourly. And really, with the lack of data, it remains to be seen if it will be able to extend the move or not. But it could be pushed by some fundamental news, or it could be pulled back by some further negativity when it comes to the pandemic, of course. Tech stocks, US, I like to show this comparison because you can see that, of course, tech stocks, in fact, the NASDAQ is actually doing quite well compared to the S&P short term. But if you, as I said in the previous videos, if you look and scroll back, you'll be able to see that actually the NASDAQ is around, so the US 100 tech stocks you'll see is around 1,000 points below the all-time high as opposed to the S&P. So it might look like in the short term, the NASDAQ and the US 100 is performing better, but at the same time, overall, it's not really. It also means that it has more room to grow because, of course, without the all-time high acting as the immediate and strongest resistance. If we take a look at, as I mentioned quickly, Bitcoin, of course, $57,000, still hovering around there. You can see the volatility, but the upward trend. And then also, let's take a look at some commodities. Let's take a look at gold and silver. Gold still managing to remain above the 1730 mark. So you can see after this huge drop to 1676, it actually managed to pull back and rebound quite significantly. So it was an upward move of around 3.5%, 3.6% with a pullback, and then testing almost exactly the 1700 level, 1700, and then starting this upward move, and it still managed to remain within this range. It approached the end of it, or the top limit, around 1755 at the end of last week, or in the middle of last week, but then we saw the pullback. But it wasn't as bad of a pullback, and it still remains above the Ichimoku cloud on the H1. Silver, similar, but slightly different because you see this rebound from this top level around the Ichimoku cloud on $26. And now currently the price is $25.5 under pressure silver, but still remains above this area of potential support. And if we take a look at oil prices, as I mentioned, starting the week quite low, but then managing to rebound. Ending the week last week, of course, you saw the pullback. We talked about it, and then it managed to consolidate around $62, but then the rebound appeared to start, and around 64.4 is where the current resistance is being met. So you can see also previous price reaction area, but nothing major when it comes to events for today. So we're gonna have to wait for the next few days, or keep an eye out for news. Could be some more news regarding any sort of news regarding reopening or lockdowns ending could really positively impact oil prices, because oil prices based on supply and demand comes from transportation mainly. WTI, similar situation, but maybe slightly better. You can see is now testing the 200 SMA on the H4 and has managed to rebound from a low of, let's see, the lowest level it reached was around 58.32 and now is around 61.27, back above this key $60 level, which we mentioned last week, and didn't actually manage to remain below it. When it comes to currencies, let's take a look at the market analysis section. No longer, again, the dollar is actually performing quite negatively today. We see the dollar is negative against all these currencies, while the euro is mixed. The franc, one of the better currencies, the pound also pulling back, and some of the emerging market currencies are also performing well. But if we take a look at the pairs, we can see that pound USD, so cable, is below 139 now, so 138.6. The medium term trend seems to be downward, as you can see, especially if we look at where it dropped from initially around 142. But there is still some consolidation, a lot of moves in this pair, and a lot of them have been driven by the dollar strength more so than the UK economy. But also any sort of news that impacts the UK economy when it comes to, of course, lockdowns, or even any sort of trade related news which involves Brexit, which used to be the main event and the main news. Any of that can end up affecting the pound, obviously, and of course the dollar from today with the Fed speeches. While the main currency pair, the Euro USD, is actually up slightly because, as I mentioned, Euro is performing better than the dollar, and the dollar, you can see with the USD index, is actually pulling back, and the Euro is performing better even. So you can see the moves are not exactly symmetrical, but in fact a bit higher on the Euro side. And now it's currently testing the 200 SMA and has overtaken these two, despite the slightly difficult start, but then managed to rebound and is now trading in the previous trading area. And so I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for paying attention. Not much news today, but some decent moves on the markets. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to keep an eye on this week. So thank you very much for watching. Good luck with your trading. My name is Walid Koudmani. Take care.